Oh, just a minute, guys. I guess I won't bother to put on the stand. Okay. So I hope you guys caught the premiere of the Terence McKenna video. It was a lot of fun to make that. Oh man, really? I don't know. I don't know what happened. My phone has decided that it's not going to turn. It's locked for some reason. So we are going to be narrow tonight. And I don't have a ton of time because there's a whole bunch of stuff going on that I really need to get worked out. But I thought it would be cool to jump in here and kind of talk about some of this stuff uh, as it relates to Terence McKenna and DMT and all of this sort of craziness. Something I've really been trying to come to terms with as of late is the same thing that everyone else, I guess, that has ever smoked DMT is trying to come to terms with, and that is, what in the fuck is it really? Like, this alternate universe, this hyperdimensional space that it brings us to, um, none of the answers that we have about what it really is and what it's really doing are really satisfactory to me. And none of them have ever set right with me as, like, complete explanations. Um, and one of the main reasons, I guess, is this crazy DMT aesthetic. It's like, you recognize Salvador Dali by certain characteristics and subtleties and a certain way that reality is warped. And I think DMT is pretty much exactly the same thing in that way. It's almost like there's a very, very recognizable artist that has, designed all of the furniture and the gears and the elves and the metallic bees and all of the creatures that are in there with us when we. Why can't I get in the middle of this? I guess it has to be. uh, so it's usually very cartoonish, and so I wonder about that. If it really is a sort of ecology of souls, as Terence McKenna suggested, what are they doing all the time? I mean, usually when you show up in DMT land, the jesters at like moderate doses are there flipping you off or just being generally weird. Um, and then, as you progress into deeper and deeper levels, the entities that you encounter tend to change. And there's sort of like a threshold. A lot of people refer to like the orange pulsing geometries before you encounter entities as like the waiting room, and it's like there's a foyer between the waiting room and the total hyperspace, like full blown high dose um, situation, and there. Once you get all the way into the hyperdimensional space, any one of the entities can be there. But it seems like the jesters are in like a kind of a intermediate place, and so I've really wondered, like, how could this be a place where these beings are just doing these totally absurd things for what, all of eternity? Do they have awareness? Like, what do they think they're doing? I mean, I've sat and watched them many times, just doing these completely bizarre things that we don't even have language for. As Terence McKenna said, DMT isn't. Yeah, I'm in Ecuador. Uh, DMT isn't so much like a drug as it's like a place, and I've often described it as pressing a button on an elevator, and more than being high, because for me at least, my consciousness is more or less the same when I smoke DMT or drink ayahuasca. It's just that I'm somewhere else. Um, I'm in DMT land, and my mind is pretty much the same as it always is, and I don't even have that sort of chaos and confusion that often accompanies LSD or psilocybin. And so the sense of like being transported to somewhere that is just as real as this realm is very strong. But that's not really comforting to me. once gave a friend, a Colombian woman, a very strong dose of DMT, and she said, you know, if that is what the afterlife is like, I don't want to go ever. And I know what she means. It's the DMT realm is very strange and mechanical and almost kind of cold and sterile in a way. And if it wasn't for the fact that every single bit of information a DMT entity has ever given me has been accurate, and not one time has anything told me to hurt myself or anyone else, I would be very suspicious of the nature of those beings. And a lot of people are. A lot of people do become suspicious of them. But again, aside from my own experience, I have extensively searched for people having encounters with DMT entities where they're told to do something terrible, and I have not been able to find any instances of these beings actually promoting anything evil. And I think that it's very difficult to be suspicious of something that is consistently, if not good, at least harmless. And so I've wondered. And another thing I should tell you is that, in case you guys haven't had this experience, there is a level of both DMT and ayahuasca experience where the cartooniness vanishes, and you're actually peering into a realm that is inhabited by beings that seem every bit as real as anything else, if not realer. Um, one of the experiences that I had in ayahuasca, the first time this happened, I think I drank 11 times. And it's as if there are all these layers. This is why the onion was sacred to the Egyptians. It was a symbol of the soul, and it was also a symbol of the way that our universe is constructed. All of these layers, right? We have the surface layer, which is the macrocosmic, so we would call it wood and glass and metal and oxygen. And then, we have the chemical level, and then beyond that, we have the energetic level, and so on and so forth. And so, all of these composite constituent parts of the universe in which we inhabit, from our own souls to the external world, are arranged in these layers. And so ayahuasca does the same thing. It first oftentimes deals with your physical stuff, and the first time you drink it, you'll only vomit and barely have any visuals. And then, you may find yourself dealing with a more psychological level, fear and anxiety. And then after that, you can go deeper into the emotional. And then that's when the real purging tends to happen. You're vomiting up um, all of the horrific traumas that have happened to you throughout your life, and all of the evil shit that you've done as well to yourself and to other people. And then after that, the spiritual opens up. And that's when this cartoony dimension seems to vanish. And in this particular case, I was shown how the universe came into existence in crystal clear, very vivid detail. And it also allowed me to see why certain numbers are kind of regarded as sacred, because the process was this process of division, and it happened in a certain sequence, which was basically just odd numbers. And but the way that this division happened, if you were to connect the point with lines, you would see these shapes that people regard as sacred, or sacred geometry. What that relationship is actually about. And so after a while, that disappeared, and I was looking at these guys that kind of looked like Egyptian gods. They're like the gatekeepers, and they had the staff with the hook on the end, and they were dipping it into the white light of creation and pulling out these like sheaths of basically what appears to be some kind of syntactical structure. And so this suggestion of Terence McKenna's that the world is concressed, what was it, what do you say, the concrescence of linguistic intentionality, these hallucinations. Interestingly, the first time I ever saw LSD hallucinations, I immediately thought that this is either it's a language or those are letters or something. And of course, many years later, Allison Gray would attempt to paint this LSD language. And so Terence McKenna's suggestion that reality itself is somehow composed of language. Before I ever heard him say that, I had seen what he meant. I think it's also interesting that the tribe of Judea, the ancient Hebrew people, basically believed that the universe was made out of the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And the Shuar here in Ecuador, in the jungles of Ecuador, believe that the universe is made from, there's not really a good word in English, but syllables is good enough. Sounds, basically, pieces of words, parts of language. So these vibrational structures. And the Icaros, which, by the way, are not songs that are sung during ayahuasca ceremonies traditionally. That's not what it meant in the beginning. It's a Quechua word, which means healing through smoke. And so tobacco smoke was inhaled or just taken into the mouth, and then the intention to heal and to dispel wounds and negative energy was projected or blown in with the tobacco smoke when a plant was harvested or when a patient needed to be cured. And it's interesting to consider that the tobacco actually does have constituent chemicals that will kill parasites and pests on vegetables, and so it's it's like the hermetic as above so below idea that the tobacco has this capacity to kill parasites in the macrocosmic world, but also serves a similar function in an energetic application. And so the Icaro is actually a Quechua word, which means healing through smoke. And but the Shuar Icaros, their version of Icaro, which, by the way, they would never. Well, I have to plug the computer in, or I'm gonna lose my chat box. Where'd it go? Bit of a mess tonight because I'm rehearsing for a show, and I just realized that I hadn't rehearsed at all. So I'm in this pile of wires and guitars and don't have things set up properly, obviously. So bear with me. What was I saying? Okay, the Shuar Icaros. Of course, they wouldn't call them Icaros because it's a Quechua word. But their ayahuasca songs are absolutely mind-bendingly insane. Like, if you guys have heard the Terence McKenna segment "Speaking in Tongues," I included it in the video that I just made. It's crazier than that. And it was, speaking of compressed linguistic intentionality, there is this technique that is part of all Shuar songs. Even when they sing in Spanish, they tend to do this, and I can do it when I'm with the medicine, but I don't know that I would try. But I can kind of describe, it's at the end of every single phrase in the ayahuasca songs, there's this like upward inflection that is just a tiny, tiny, tiny microtone, but enough that it teases out this tension. And one night I drank ayahuasca alone, and ayahuasca has this incredible capacity to actually manipulate your body so that you are compelled to do things that ayahuasca wants you to do, which is another reason I have trouble being suspicious of the entities of the consciousness that's behind it, is that, I have been basically marionetted by ayahuasca in the jungle, and it did not harm me or do anything dangerous with me. It just, it can be trusted. And it's not that it is forcing you, it's just that it has a way of like coaxing you. For example, one time I didn't want to go into the jungle because it was night, and I'd never been to the jungle on ayahuasca at night before. I was on the porch of a house, and the Pachamama was telling me to go into the jungle alone at night, and I thought, well, I'm not going to do that. And she's like, yes, you are. And so I had to go to the bathroom really badly all of a sudden, but I couldn't get it out. And I understood immediately. It was like, she is manipulating my organs to make me do what she wants me to do. And so, I eventually started walking towards the jungle, and I tried to get out of it. I tried to go in the grass, and even though my stomach was like hurting, I couldn't do it until I got into the jungle, and then I was able to release that. And so there are other things that ayahuasca can do to manipulate your body in order to teach you things, and singing is an essential part of shamanism and generally the practice of plant medicine. And so there are muscles in your throat that you don't know are there. Trust me. Like you can move things that you would never imagine are even there. And once you learn to do this, you can make sounds that are impossible without this almost preternatural knowledge of your muscular topography in there. You know, you I you can open the whole thing and like pull the vocal cord open almost. That's what it feels like, anyways. And then in the abdomen and weird places in your back. And I actually learned this for the first time. I had drank in the same jungle with the same Shuar, taught shaman in Guadalquivir, Ecuador. And oh man, that was a crazy night. The first thing that happened, and this has to do with Terence McKenna's like ideas about this compressed linguistic intentionality as the structure of the universe. At one point, I was laying on the deck and I was thinking like, I was getting all these random weird visions that made no sense, and I was complaining to ayahuasca like, what's with all the random bullshit? Like, what is this crap? You know what I mean? I think in this case it was like this really like, it looked like a Japanese like ultra modern artist had painted like a trolley, kind of as DMT would conceive it. That's the best I can do. And so it's like just there, and it's not really even moving. And I'm like, what is this crap? You know, I just don't. Can you give me something I can use? And she said, first, your mind works in symbols. So just because you don't understand what you're looking at doesn't mean that nothing is being communicated to your subconscious mind. And I thought, well, that was an excellent answer. And so, but she said, okay, then I will show you something you can use. And so suddenly I was looking at this like geisha woman, like this alien geisha kind of, you know, pale skin, very beautiful and just very strange and gaunt. And so there was a large black being next to her with like, it's not like a black man, like he had like plated armor skin, and he looked kind of almost like Darth Vader. And he like walked real slow around from behind the wall, and he started doing this like super slow dance, really, really confident. And when he would do like little extra movements, the crickets or locusts in the trees would go insane. So I was like, okay, so what is this? Just some random cricket god? Like I still can't use this. And she's like, okay, well here are these. And she made a gesture with her hand, and these green almost looked like Japanese, but again like Japanese alien Sanskrit or something. They were bright green and super intricate and weird, and they came floating at me. And so I was like, again, you know, that's really cool that you can do that, but I still can't use that. And she said, yes, you can. You will make music with them. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, how am I going to learn? Is that like written music in some other dimension? Am I going to learn to read this somehow? And then, you know, she just kind of vanished, and the shaman was sitting beside me. When I opened my eyes and I sat up, and he said, you were becoming a shaman. He had drank with most of the people in the crowd, like, you know, 50 times or something. And they were repeat customers, most of them. And so he said, you know, you have only begun drinking, and you drink 2 cups, and then you're helping the other people that have drank 100 times more than you have. And he said, but you must sing. And the reason he was saying this is because you know, I'm a musician, but I would never, ever have performed in public without having at least a few beers or dropping some acid or some Molly or something. Like I just would not just sing. And so at the end of the night, when we were singing the medicine songs, everyone was supposed to sing together. And it pissed him off so much that at one point he actually said to me, he who does not sing with us sings against us. And I thought that was a little extreme, you know, like, really, man, you're going to make an enemy of me because I don't want to sing? But, you know, really, there is a deeper reason for it. And the reason is that the collective mind has this tremendous power. And, you know, I talk sometimes about the experiment that was recently done where it was determined that for certain human consciousness has an effect on subatomic particles, but it's really negligible until there's a group. But then once you have a group that is focused on one outcome, the potential or the possibility that that group is going to successfully influence, the outcome of an experiment is exponentially higher. And so when you have a circle in an ayahuasca ceremony, um, man, why can't I get in the center of this? Uh, Maybe that's better. The circle represents like the tribe, the collective mind. The whole group has to be unified, and so whatever anyone does, everyone must do. And so in the Shuar way, for example, if tobacco goes around, everyone has to take the tobacco through the nose. You pour it in your hand and take it in through the nose, and it's to concentrate and focus the mind. And also, it's said to empower your prayers, which makes sense because if it's our consciousness that compels the chaotic energy to order in conformity with our will, it gets its directives from consciousness, right? Man, I'm just never in this. I don't know what the fuck is up with that. It's tobacco's function is to focus the consciousness, and so it focuses the consciousness, and that's what empowers your prayers. It's for the same reason that the Shuar would not prostrate themselves in the ground. They say, don't lay down when you pray. Sit up and have respect for yourself, because you don't want to pray to Jesus to make something happen, because Jesus isn't real. You want to use your consciousness directly to influence the thing that you are trying to make happen. That is real. You are real, and your will is real. And so you don't give your power away to some imaginary deity and then beg and plead with it to influence whatever it is that you're trying to make happen. You want to take this responsibility yourself. And so he said, so you must sing, right? Because I wasn't participating at night. And also because he felt that I was going to be a shaman myself, and shamans have to sing songs. And so I set up, and it took me forever. Like, I was so nervous. And of course, it's not English. It's just these weird Shuar. They're not Shuar. They're vibrational sounds that come from some other dimension. They're truly a channeled language, as far as I can tell. And over time, I've actually seen at least 2 people drink ayahuasca that I made and start speaking or singing in this very distinctive language that I know they've never heard. Like, the only way that they would have heard it is if they were in the jungle with the Shuar, and I know for certain that they had never done that. And they hadn't heard me do it yet, because both of them beat me to it in ceremony, right? They just started doing it themselves. So I'm pretty well convinced that these vibrations, these syllables, these sounds that the Shuar say are really the foundation of the universe. It's the same as the Logos, right? This Jewish idea of this vibration that has rushed forth and compelled the chaotic energy to order, right? And so I started to sing eventually these sounds, and the ayahuasca was like opening my throat and changing how my diaphragm muscles were positioned, and the sounds that were coming out were just absolutely unbelievable. I mean, just literally impossible. And so later on, when I started drinking alone, I was one night sitting in my ceremonial space, and I started to actually I was beating the drum, because that's how we kind of get in this trance state and keep the mind focused simultaneously. And as I was doing it, I started kind of hum, and I saw up out of the swirling colors this spirit being kind of like formed by wrapping the tendrils of color around his body, almost like one of those like Mexican, you just pop your head through it. I can't remember what they're called, almost like a poncho, I guess. And then he had a hat, and he leaned his head like right on my head, and he was kind of nodding, and I would get stuck, because kind of hard to just continue doing something with this like enormous spirit being leaning into your face. And so, I'm trying to keep singing, and if I stopped, he would look at me like, what else? What else you got? And then so after I had done this sufficiently, I heard the voice of ayahuasca tell me, just make this sound. And it manipulated my voice so that I was making 2 pitches at once, and one of them was kind of out of tune. So it was 2 pitches out of like Eskimo throat singing, I guess, where the point of it, though, is that the out of phase pitches compel the energy in the room to come into harmony. It's the same idea as when a tension tone in music right on, guys. I'm sorry, I just looked at the chat. In the same way that music invites, attention tone, invites resolution. This is how one of the reasons that the shaman can control the energy in the room is through this vibration, this manipulation of vibration. And this is why the Schwar songs at the end of every phrase with the ayahuasca songs, they'll kind of go a little bit out of tune and a little bit sharp. And they're just constantly compelling the energy into homeostasis um, through this mechanism. And eventually I discovered that this is also how we are able to interact our consciousness with energy, because the third eye, the pineal gland, which by the way you can see through sometimes when you drink ayahuasca. And incredibly, the first time it happened to me, the shaman, when I saw him in the morning, the first thing he said to me was, sometimes you can see through your forehead when you drink the medicine. And I'm like, not hi, hello, what's for breakfast? This was just the craziest thing that was the last thing that happened to me before I went to sleep, and the first thing he said. And so anyways, I started studying the pineal gland in depth, and I discovered that it does indeed have rods and cones, and it's attached to the visual neocortex. And so being able to see out of it is actually totally viable. It's totally plausible. And beyond that, what it actually is, and so you guys don't try to decalcify your pineal gland. It's not real. The pineal gland is a sac with two piezoelectric calcium carbonate crystals. It's literally made of calcium carbonate. It's supposed to be calcium. So that whole thing about decalcifying your pineal gland is just some stupid shit that someone made up because they read Wikipedia and they were probably not quite bright enough to understand what it was saying. And so they made up this crap about decalcifying your pineal gland. If you successfully decalcified your pineal gland, it would disappear. Don't try to decalcify your pineal gland. So, but what it is two piezoelectric crystals. Piezoelectric basically means that they are causing each other to, they're rubbing together and creating a vibration. And I would imagine that the movement that causes the rubbing is just from biological processes, right? So this rubbing is creating some vibration, and it is emitting EMFs that are slightly out of phase with each other, and it is that tension that can compel other forms of energy to act in accordance with our will. So this idea of slightly out of phase vibrations is a really, really essential fundamental secret of the occult mystery schools, and it goes beyond just shamanism and ayahuasca. It's one of the foundational mechanisms of our reality, and it is how electromagnetic energy is able to interact with our consciousness, which is also electromagnetic energy. It was a really crazy journey figuring all that out, because I started to realize that the electromagnetic energy is basically what our thought was, and these patterns, they're all just EMFs. And so our capacity to interact with the subatomic realm is because of these electromagnetic waves, which, by the way, is kind of a blanket term that applies to a lot of different things. It's almost more of a characteristic functionality of waves than it is an actual force. And so I started to realize the importance of electromagnetic waves in consciousness and the pineal gland, and then I discovered that the brain is actually loaded with magnetite. There's like crazy concentration of magnetic minerals in our brains. And so all of these things, by the way, that I've been learning and discovering in this metaphysical process have kind of been directed by these psychedelic experiences. And so what will happen is I will get some bit of information, some new insight, and then I will just stumble across the science accidentally within a few days every single time. And so, it's not necessary to invoke woo to understand something like that. It's just necessary to understand that there's symmetry in the waves that give rise to our experience and our ability to experience. And so this is, I think, where synchronicities and the type of experiences that I was just talking about You know, it's really difficult, as Terence McKenna said. You cannot know anything. All you can do is, well, how did he say? He said, my technique is not to believe anything, because if you believe something, then you're automatically precluded from believing its opposite. And usually, you know, like alchemists knew, the way to extract truth, to get closer to divinity, is to combine two things that are opposites and extract from that a third thing that is closer to the philosophum bonum. So let's see, there was something else that was, okay, so how about if we wrap this up with my, unless you guys have like questions or anything you want me to talk about. Oh, by the way, do me a favor, hit the like button, share, subscribe, support us on Patreon. There's a Zelle and PayPal address, and there's also PayPal or a cryptocurrency wallet. We really do appreciate support. We're demonetized. We get no money from YouTube. And you guys will notice there's no super chat button. You can't just click something and send me money. And so we don't make really anything from this channel anymore. So we really do appreciate support. Okay, so again, unless somebody has... Oh, well, we never really got to the whole thing about hyperspace. I guess, you know, what I was trying to get to, just to resolve that, is that it does really seem like what psychedelics do is kind of like turn down a reducing valve in our nervous system, so that we're able to access different, I guess, spectrums of existence that are not always available to us. But that still doesn't really satisfy me. Like, why is it so cartoony? If this is a real dimension, then what the hell is going on there? What are they doing? What do they think they're doing? Okay, so the Terence McKenna story, my personal interaction with him, I did put it in the description, but I'll tell it to you directly. 1998, I had just returned from a dark stint in DC, and I would return again. Unfortunately, I should have gone to Palinka instead. But I had never used email before. I think I was like 18 years old. My family was extremely poor. We didn't have computers in our house. Plus, it was 1998. I don't think everyone really had internet yet. But I had never heard of email. And so I don't even think I'd heard of the internet. Or maybe I'd heard of it, but I'd never seen it or something. And so my friend brought me into his computer room to watch the pilot episode of South Park, which was Jesus and Santa Claus beating the holy hell out of each other. It was one of the greatest things I'd ever seen in my entire life. And so I mentioned, you know, oh yeah, I just found out that Terence McKenna is doing this retreat in Palenque, Mexico, and I really want to go, but I don't know what to do about it. And he said, why don't you send him an email? And I was like, what the fuck is email? And he just looked at me like, I mean, it must have been pretty well known, because he definitely looked at me like, are you fucking serious? Like, he's waiting for the punchline, and there was no punchline. So so he showed me what email was, and so I sent an email to Terence saying, hey, you know, I really want to go to this thing, but I'm just a broke teenager. There's no way I can pay $2,500. And so a few days later, my friend's mom came out of the great room and said, hey, there's an email for Harley. It's from someone TM. And I was like, no fucking way. So I went back there and opened it up, and sure enough, Terence McKenna had answered me. And so, true story, Terence McKenna is the first person that I ever exchanged emails with in my entire life. And he said, if you can just make it to Palenque, I won't charge you the admission. You just have to get here. And I didn't do it, of course, and I've regretted that for forever. But yeah, that was an amazing experience. I actually got to interact with him, and I was shown some kindness by Terence, who was not nearly as famous as he is now. Not even close. So does anybody have anything? Because otherwise I have to go buy some crypto. I want to let you guys know this Eagle Eye token that I've been pushing, I'm not being paid to do it. It is blowing up. It's still blowing up, and it's still super low. So if you guys are into crypto, do yourself a favor and buy some Eagle Eye. Again, not a paid endorsement, man. I just know if you want to make money really fast, this is a good way. Send me an email if you need help. I'll walk you through everything. Don't mind. And thank you guys so much, those of you that have supported us. We got hacked, lost all of our money. It was absolutely devastating. We had been broke for years. And so we're already getting back to where we were as if nothing happened. And that is absolutely amazing. And it's totally because of people in this community. Of course, we still need support. So feel free to support us. We really do appreciate it. And thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. And we'll see you again soon.